Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Israeli military say they have proof of how Hamas has set up a command post underneath a hospital. Political reporter Brian Lilly explains how anti-Semitism appears to be on the rise in Canada. And the collection of the annual Christmas shoebox campaign begins very soon. We hear from a spokesperson from Samaritan's Purse on how you can donate and help put a smile on a child's face.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News.
Thanks so much for joining us. Foreign Affairs Minister Melanie Joly is criticizing the lack of fuel in Gaza after the United Nations says it may have to pause aid to Palestinians as a result. Joly says civilians must be protected, and in order for UN's life-saving work to continue, more fuel, food, and water must get into Gaza. No Canadians were named on the most recent list of potential evacuees to cross the tightly controlled Rafah border crossing into Egypt on Tuesday as the war between Israel and Hamas intensifies. There have been more reports surfacing showing how the terrorist group Hamas had military posts beneath a hospital in Gaza. One Israeli soldier showed us an example of where it's believed Hamas was holding hostages they abducted during the initial attack on October the 7th.
You can see the tunnel. The tunnel is let down more than 20 meters down. The rowboat found a door over tunnel. It's part of the same floor and it slides down here. And this is the place where I showed you the tunnel. I want you to see. A woman, clothes, and a rope. A rope next to the legs. We can see this area is a closed area from the rest of the hospital. We can see the ventilation air that was done improvisely to this area. Kalashnikovs. And then we have the RPGs. People shooting RPGs from hospitals. This is Hamas firing RPGs for hospitals. The world has to understand who is Israel fighting against. They even have bullets in this motorcycle.
There have been a number of rallies in support of both the Palestinian people and Israelis across university and college campuses in the United States. Many say they want to see the genocide stopped.
Fire now! Ceasefire now!
To condemn Hamas, it's a good thing. But in the same time, if you didn't condemn Israel for committing war crimes, this is a double standard.
No one here is here because they want to hurt Jewish people in New Orleans or Jewish people at Tulane or even Jewish people in America generally. That's not why we're here. We're here because we want to stop the genocide.
It's a lot harder to have a civil conversation when emotions and tensions are so high and so many people are so personally connected to this.
Creating a space for people to be able to communicate respectfully is critical, and on this campus it's really needed.
Now, tens of thousands of supporters also marched in support of Israel by the National Mall in Washington, D.C. on Tuesday. Many were calling for the release of the 240 hostages being held by Hamas and to condemn the rise in anti-Semitism. Rallies have continued across Canada as well in support of both Israel and the Palestinians. Protesters in many cities, including Toronto and Montreal, are demanding a ceasefire.
It's very electrifying like this. It was so much people, more than we hoped for, and they arrived and, they cheered and they cried and they hugged. And now we know it's no longer my story or the people that have straight, immediate connection to the kibbutzes. They are all our families, and we miss them. Even if I never met any of them, I miss them, and they all need to be home. We need to remember that they're all civilians. They're not military. They're kids, elderly, simple people that was waking up one day on the 7th of October for horrific, terrifying terror.
Boycott Israel! Boycott Israel! Israel terrorise les enfants de Palestine! Israel terrorise!
Vivian Silver, a Canadian-Israeli humanitarian believed to have been kidnapped during the October 7th attack, was confirmed dead by Israeli authorities. The 74-year-old retiree had dedicated years to the cause of peace between Israel and Palestine. Police say she was at her home in kibbutz near the Gaza Strip when the terrorists stormed her community. She fled to a safe room where she was able to text loved ones, but the terrorists lit her house on fire, and that's where she died. Her remains were recently identified from the rubble of where her home once stood. Anti-Semitism appears to be on the rise in many regions of our country. There have been a number of attacks on Jews and Jewish schools along with synagogues. Political reporter Brian Lilly says he chatted with survivors from the Hamas attack last month, and they're disappointed by the support Hamas is receiving here in Canada.
Yesterday, Hal, I interviewed two survivors of the October 7th terrorist attack from the kibbutz that was closest to the music festival, and it was heartbreaking listening to their stories, but they were also telling me that they're very disappointed what they're seeing here in Canada, that it is disturbing to them, and that people need to understand what happened. You know, they don't want the war going on anymore either, but Hamas, they say, is the issue, and Hamas, they told me, is also the biggest oppressor of the Palestinian people in Gaza.
Political reporter Brian Lilly will also have the latest on if farm fuels and machinery will soon be exempt from the federal carbon tax. He'll have details coming up after business news. Police have arrested a man in connection with the death of hockey player Adam Johnson, who died last month in England. The 29-year-old sustained a cut to his neck while playing for the Nottingham Panthers against the Sheffield Steelers on October the 28th. Johnson's cut was sustained when he was hit by 31-year-old Matt Petgrave, who played for the Steelers. Police say the man arrested remains in custody. The Panthers Hockey Club called the incident a freak accident, while others who witnessed the collision say it was done with intent. Police say they're continuing to support Johnson's family while the investigation into his death continues. Peter Nygaard, who once led a women's fashion empire, was found guilty of 4 counts of sexual assault. He was also found guilty on a charge of forcible confinement. The jury at his trial in Toronto handed down the verdict on their 5th day of deliberations following a 6-week trial.
This is a crime that typically happens in private and profoundly impacts human dignity. To stand up and recount those indignities in a public forum such as a courtroom is never easy and takes great courage. Everyone who came forward here is to be commended.
All of my heart is with survivors. I've spoken with them. It's always so many different emotions. It's relief, it's victory, it's joy, it's pain, it's disappointment. This is a battle won in a much bigger war.
A coalition of health organizations is calling on Ottawa to take action regarding the sale of marketing of flavored nicotine products. They say many are being marketed to children and teenagers by Imperial Tobacco Canada. They say something needs to be done to address that now.
Imperial Tobacco is using classic lifestyle advertising that we saw for cigarettes, and is promoting these addictive products in places where youth are exposed, such as convenience stores and Instagram. Tobacco companies have been selling nicotine pouches in other countries, but for Canada, this is a new product category that is not covered by federal and provincial tobacco laws. It is completely legal for stores to sell these nicotine pouches to children of any age. It may say somewhere on the label that the product is only intended for those over age 18, but this is useless. A retailer that sells to minors will face no offense, no charges, and no fines.
A Stats Canada study says around 7 million Canadians struggled with hunger last year. The study says around 18% of families reported experiencing food insecurity. Now that's up from 16% in 2021. It says food insecurity was highest in Newfoundland and Labrador at 23%, followed by Alberta and New Brunswick closely, both at 22%. The rate shot up to 41% for homes where women were single parents. One of the largest ever drug busts in the city of Red Deer, Alberta was made last month. Alert Red Deer's organized crime team says more than $2 million worth of drugs and cash were seized on October the 19th. Police say they seized large amounts of fentanyl, methamphetamine, and some cocaine. They also took in just over $17,000 in cash and 9 firearms. There were also 20,000 rounds of ammunition and body armor that was also confiscated. 43-year-old Delman Croich was taken into custody and faces lots of drugs and weapons-related charges. He remains in custody and will appear in court on December the 4th. This is National Collection Week for Operation Christmas Child. Those are the shoeboxes which are filled with goodies and are given out to needy kids around the world. There are more than 4,500 drop-off locations across Canada, including some here in Lethbridge at Park Meadows Baptist Church and Fresh Life Church. Samaritan's Purse Canada is behind the campaign, and the group's News Media Relations Manager, Frank King, joins us now from Calgary to talk about it. Frank, there's still some time for people to fill those shoeboxes. The deadline is coming up on Sunday. What items are needed the most?
The three things we look for from folks are school supplies, hygiene items, and toys. Those are the three things that can really help make life easier for children in needy and hurting situations. And of course, all the details on what to put in boxes and what not to put in boxes can be found at samaritanspurse.ca.
So Frank, how many shoeboxes were dished out last year, and where will the shoeboxes be headed to this year?
Last year, I can tell you that generous Canadians packed 415,000 shoeboxes for children in need. Worldwide, people in Canada, the US, UK, Australia, Germany, South Korea, and maybe a couple of other countries packed almost 10 million shoeboxes. So that's a lot of children who are going to receive boxes. And in many cases, Hal, these boxes will be the first gift that these children will have ever received in their lives.
Now, Frank, let's talk about the impact these gifts have had on so many kids around the world. You say you've witnessed the kids' joy firsthand?
It's truly amazing how when you see the reaction of kids, because of course I've been at some shoebox distribution events, some kids are very excited and they're showing stuff to the person beside them and they're actually trading stuff, which of course we're fine with. In other cases, the children look carefully through their boxes, then they close the box up and they don't open it again until they get home so they can show it to their families. So it's quite amazing to see the different reactions at these shoebox distribution events.
Now, for those who don't have the time to go out, shop, and physically fill a shoebox, there is an easy alternative. Can you explain how it works to pack boxes online through packabox.ca?
In fact, Hal, that's the way my wife and I pack our shoeboxes every year. We go to packabox.ca. It's almost like shopping at Amazon. You select your gender and age range. You're presented with a general little basket of items. You can add on to that. And then once you've packed all your shoeboxes, you go to the checkout, you pay your money, and then it's all done for you. And then what happens is early in the new year, we get hundreds of volunteers at our Calgary Processing Center to actually physically pack the boxes that generous Canadians do online. And then they get shipped down to countries in Central America, Ukraine, Philippines, French-speaking West Africa. And from there, our partners there arrange distribution events, invite the children to come, and then the children get to hear the gospel first, and then they're given the shoe boxes. And at the same time, we offer the children a little booklet called The Greatest Gift, which explains who Jesus is and why we're doing this and how they can have a relationship with him. And again, that's entirely voluntary. The children don't need to take the booklet.
Okay, thanks so much for your time today, Frank. That was Frank King, News Media Relations Manager for Samaritan's Purse Canada, joining us from Calgary. Lethbridge Family Services' 31st annual Angel Tree Christmas campaign officially launched on Tuesday morning. Avonlea Homes is the new presenting sponsor for 2023. They kicked off the initiative with a sizable donation to the cause.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm wrong on that. The total just changed to $19,700. We just got another $500 donation. It takes a lot to be a presenting sponsor, and one thing that we focused on is that we did not want it to be of all the financial concept. Although that is important, it's more celebrating 31 years of the Angel Tree program, 31 years of bringing joy and bringing happiness and reaching those that we will never meet, we will never see, but knowing that on Christmas Day that we have brought joy to their lives and their families.
So many of us in the community want to be able to help, and we see images from all over the world of things that are happening, and we feel so helpless. But there are things that we can do, and we can help. And one of the ways that we can help the most is by looking around right here in our own community within Southern Alberta and meeting the needs of those who are struggling. And that's what we do here at Angel Tree.
And this year, the campaign has a goal to help 3,800 babies, children, and youth here in our community. You know, youth today need a lot of our love and support. That's according to Tracy Muchler, who is the Executive Director of McMahon Youth Services for the South Region. Muchler says there are many factors which impacts the mental health of young people.
Oftentimes there's so many complex and intertwining factors. And so oftentimes the youth that we're serving are very complex. And so one thing though that's prevalent right now in society, and especially with our youth right now, is mental health needs, and just really looking at the whole person's well-being. And so it might be mental health, it could be addiction, it could be housing, it could be skill building, anything to kind of support them in their transition into adulthood and independence.
Make sure you catch the full interview with Tracy Muchler of McMahon Youth Services in Lethbridge and BCN's Jeanette Rocher coming up later in our broadcast. You know, many people in Lethbridge have been visiting Tim Hortons this week for more than just their daily double-doubles. The Restaurant Brands International chain kicked off their National Holiday Smile Cookie Week. With each $1.50 cookie purchased, 75 cents goes to Tim's Camp for Kids. The other half goes to a local charity. Toby Boulay, father of the late Humboldt Bronco Logan Boulay, who became a hero for donating his organs, says he was thrilled to hear that all 14 Lethbridge locations asked him if they could name their Green Shirt Day as the charity of their choice.
Wow, like it's Tim Hortons. It's a big deal because everybody, well, you had a Tim Hortons coffee, you had a Tim Hortons donut. It's just like, it's an icon of Canada. So we were pretty excited, and then we found out more about it. We got more excited, and then Bernie said, I have to go to work, and I had to get 120 volunteers. So then I got excited for that too. So that was fun. No, it's a big deal.
Now, Boulay was not alone in decorating the cookies on Tuesday morning. He received some much-needed help from those with the University of Lethbridge and Lethbridge College.
Today we've got Dean Gallimore. He's the Board of Governors Chair for the University of Lethbridge. And we've got Michael Marcotte, who's the Board of Governors Chair from the Lethbridge College. There's a bit of a competition going on here. We've got shaky hands Gallimore, and we got steady hands Marcotte right there. We're not sure who's doing a better job.
The Logan Boulay effect definitely had an effect on me, realizing like how important it is about the organs that we have and just not using them to their full extent that we can do after life. So I think it's really beautiful that he was able to help so many people.
Tim Hortons National Holiday Smile Cookie Week runs now until November the 19th. Tasty cookies while supporting some worthwhile causes. Love it. Well, we've also been loving the mild temperatures here in our region over the past few days, but some rain clouds, however, may be moving into Lethbridge. Full weather details are on deck. You know, it's really sad with the time change. Many people don't ever even see the sunshine. They go to work when it's dark and then leave home and it's dark. Hard to believe that the sun actually goes down now before 5 p.m. Tonight, it should be mainly clear, dark as well, with a low near -4 in Lethbridge. Wednesday, more clouds should roll in with a chance of showers developing and a high near 6 degrees. Sun mixed with cloud and a high of 5 degrees on Thursday. It'll be mainly sunny for both Friday and Saturday, with the mercury increasing to 13. Sunday, a few clouds will roll in with a high of 9. Monday, just a few degrees cooler under a cloudy sky with a high of 6. Now checking the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 4 degrees with an average low of -7. The record high was 19 degrees set way back in 1953, and the record low was a very cold -23 in 1955. The sun rose at 7:41, and there you go, it's set at 4:50. Let's see how our home and native land is shaping up weather-wise on Wednesday. Expect light showers and a high of 10 degrees in Victoria. Rain at 7 is on tap for Vancouver. Clearing at 4 degrees for Edmonton on Wednesday. A chance of flurries developing and a high of only 2 degrees in Calgary. Increasing clouds and a high of 3 degrees for Regina. Overcast and 4 degrees for Saskatoon. It should be mainly sunny and a high of 6 degrees in Winnipeg on Wednesday. In the central part of the country, it'll be mainly sunny and a high of 12 in Toronto. A mixture of sun and cloud at 9 degrees in Ottawa. Overcast and 8 is on tap for Montreal. In the Atlantic region, expect a few clouds and a high of 4 in Fredericton. A mixture of sun and cloud and 6 for Halifax. Rain and 4 for Charlottetown. And in St. John's, expect a cloudy day with a high near 0 on Wednesday. Land development in Lethbridge could be significantly impacted in the future due to escalating economic challenges tied to inflation and interest rates. That's according to the city's Chief Financial Officer, Daryl Matthews. Tuesday kicked off the city's 3-day annual economic review process, where the Standing Policy Committee delved into its financial landscape. Matthews says Lethbridge has seen a scaling back of subdivision building activities, a trend expected to continue into next year. He says the slowdown will impact city revenue in the coming years, which could affect future capital projects, property taxes, and fees in their 2027 through 2030 operating budgets. Teck Resources says it is selling its steelmaking coal business in a series of deals worth $9 billion US. The company says Swiss Commodities such as Glencore has agreed to pay $6.9 billion for a 77% stake in Elk Valley Resources. Japan's Nippon Steel, meanwhile, will acquire a 20% stake. Teck has been weighing the future of its steelmaking coal business since it became apparent its plan to spin off the operations into a separate company did not have the required shareholder support. The face of King Charles is about to grace Canadian coins. The Royal Canadian Mint in Winnipeg showcased its design of the King that will appear on one side of the new coins, replacing the late Queen Elizabeth. A design by Canadian portrait artist Stephen Rosati was chosen out of 350 artists and approved by Buckingham Palace. The Mint has said a small amount of the 2023 dated coins with the King's likeness are to go into circulation in early December. Doesn't look bad. Now here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 314 points on the day to finish at 20,023. The Dow was up 489 points to 34,827. The S&P 500 was up 84 on the day to 4495, and the Nasdaq was up 326 points to 14,094. West Texas Intermediate Oil was down 9 cents to 78.17 US per barrel. Natural gas was down 9 cents as well to 3.11 US. Gold was up 68 cents to 1964.97 US an ounce, and silver was even on the day at 23.09 US an ounce. Feed wheat is at $9.17 per bushel, barley's at $7.16, canola's at $16.17, and corn is at $8.45 per bushel. Live cattle December contract was up 93 cents to $175.85. Feeder cattle were down 68 cents to $230.05, and lean hogs December contract was down $1.05 to $72.30. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 73.05 US. Recapping one of our top stories, a Stats Canada study says around 7 million Canadians struggled with hunger last year. The study says 18% of families reported experiencing food insecurity. That is up from 16% in 2021. It says food insecurity was highest in Newfoundland and Labrador at 23%, followed closely by Alberta and New Brunswick, both at 22%. A new poll says the majority of Canadians want to see the carbon tax axed when it comes to all forms of home heating. The recent polls also says the federal carbon tax has been hurting the Trudeau government. Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly will have details for us shortly. Listen, when you see news happening in your community, be sure to drop us an email at info@bridgecitynews.ca. And if you missed any of today's top local stories, visit our website, bridgecitynews.ca.
Here's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar. Southminster United Church is hosting their annual Christmas Tea and Bazaar on Saturday, November 18th from 2 to 4 p.m. in Southminster Hall. Enjoy this fancy tea with finger sandwiches and dainty treats. Plus, browse many items at the bazaar such as baking, crafts, jewelry, and other Christmas surprises. Tickets are $12 and will be available at the door. Discover unique finds for all the people on your Christmas list at the Lethbridge Handmade Market on Saturday, December 2nd at the Agri-Food Hub and Trade Center's UFA Hall. Over 115 handmade artisans will be on hand to show their various crafts, art, jewelry, and all kinds of things. The market opens at 9 a.m. with a $7 admission. Kids 14 and under enter for free. Do you have a heart to serve our community? Streets Alive Mission is looking for volunteers to help make sandwiches, sort incoming donations, assist with Foot Friday, and many other opportunities to serve, receive training, and to provide support for this important cause of bringing hope to the hopeless. Visit streetsalive.ca to fill out their volunteer application or call 403-320-1159. And that's today's Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Most Canadians agree that the carbon tax is hurting both families and business owners. Has the tax become Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's biggest nightmare? A new poll suggests that the majority of Canadians want to see the carve-out expanded to include all forms of home heating. There's also a push to exempt farms and food. Now, to chat about this in more detail is political columnist Brian Lilley, who joins us once again from Toronto. Brian, is Trudeau ruining the day he messed with his own tax?
He must be. He must be ruining the day he messed with his own tax because, look, the government didn't seem like it was going to budge on the carbon tax. Pierre Poilievre was having a field day campaigning against it and, finding supporters who were going to move over to his side anyway, but it wasn't hurting them the way it is now. And then back on July 1st, they brought in the carbon tax in Atlantic Canada in the same way it had been applied in other parts of the country, like Alberta, like Ontario, and gas shoots up. There's months of controversy. And then in October 26, just a month after his environment minister had said, no, we can't have special carve-outs, they have a special carve-out. So he's got people across the rest of the country saying, you've got to do this for us. And they're saying no again. But as you say, 72%, this was a poll by Abacus Data for the Toronto Star, which said, oh no, everyone wants the same special treatment that you're giving to Atlantic Canada. We'll see if he budges on that. I mean, they voted against it last week, of course, but we'll see if they do end up budging or if there's other areas where they're going to have to budge, like this new bill that's, well, not exactly new, but this bill that's now before the Senate that Pierre Poilievre is putting the big push on.
Yeah, let's chit-chat a bit about that bill. C-234, Brian, to expand and exempt farm machinery and fuels from the carbon tax. Tell me more about the bill and if it actually has a chance of passing.
It does have a chance of passing. I don't think the Prime Minister's office wants it to pass. And, there's lots of talk of phone calls from the PMO to senators to try and delay the vote, to try and, ensure it doesn't pass. But this is a bill that passed the House of Commons back in March. Was introduced by Ben Lobb. He's a Conservative MP from Huron area. So there's a fair bit of agriculture in Ben Lobb's riding. And he said, you know what, let's expand what's exempt in farms to include more machinery. So your tractors and your combines, let's exempt their fuels. And that includes gasoline, diesel, light oil for certain functions, propane, and very important, natural gas for grain bin dryers. So, this would be a major carve out. But again, back to Stephen Guilbeault, the environment minister, who at the end of September was saying no special carve outs. Well, after they announced that they're doing the special carve-out for home heating oil, he's now saying there will be no more exemptions as long as I'm environment minister. So you could almost see Pierre Poilievre's glee when he was talking about launching a campaign to back the passing of Bill C-234, because he was saying, if this passes, we won't have Stephen Guilbeault as environment minister anymore. He says he'll resign. So, will it pass? Very possibly. And some liberals are openly saying, oh, this isn't a big deal. Pierre Poilievre's just, data mining. He's just getting people to sign a petition so he can get your information. But this is going to pass anyway. So liberals are even talking about it passing now. Will the government proclaim it? Will they bring it into force? I don't know. But, if this goes through, then yes, it does make life easier for farmers. Presumably down the road, it would make food less expensive.
Right.
One story that Poilievre likes to tell is about the greenhouse in his riding that is charged a carbon tax for putting CO2 into the greenhouse where they grow tomatoes. And that drives up the price compared to the Mexican tomatoes that are trucked in from across the continent.
Brian, let's circle back to Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault for just a moment. I saw a video recently that went viral on social media where he admitted that he's a socialist. Did he ever receive any backlash as a result of that?
Well, from people who don't like socialists, yeah. But, there's no reprimand. And it shouldn't be shocking that people in a Trudeau cabinet would call themselves socialist. I've said for a long time, this is not your grandfather's or your father's or your uncle's Liberal Party. This is a very different Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau. First off, he's made it a cult of personality around him. Secondly, he has gone much further to the left. There was a woman who was caught on a hot mic back in 1968 as Pierre Trudeau was running for leader of the Liberal Party. A woman named Judy Lamarche, who was in the government of Pearson. And she was caught on mic saying about Pierre Trudeau, I'll paraphrase it because I can't use her salty language, you've got to stay in the race, Paul. Can't let him win. He's not even a Liberal. He's a socialist. So, Pierre Trudeau was definitely on the socialist end. Justin Trudeau is. The fact that he recruited a guy who was, in my view, always a socialist to run for the Liberal Party and then made him environment minister, not a shock to me.
Brian, home prices are still quite high, and a new report says rent has increased by almost 10%. And now the Bank of Canada is warning that we may never see 1 or 2% interest rates ever again. The overnight rate, I believe, is currently sitting at 5%. Could we actually see more increases from the Bank of Canada?
They haven't ruled it out. They're talking about, we have to get used to interest rates remaining high. Deputy Governor Rogers was giving a speech in Vancouver late last week talking about this very thing, that rates are not going to be coming down anytime soon. And look, we're not going to go back to the rates that we enjoyed over the last, more than a decade. Those came about as a result of the economic crash of 2008, 2009. And then, they started to go up a little bit and then went down again to stimulate the economy due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Having the bank interest rate overnight of, 1/4 of a percentage point, that's unheard of, especially over a prolonged period of time. It's a shock to many that they've gone up so quickly and it's hurting. But if they do go down, don't expect them to go back down to where they were. Could they go down to 3%? Sure. Could they go up, though, to 5.5%, 6%? That's possible as well. Tiff Macklem, the main Bank of Canada governor, hasn't ruled that out. And he's given a speech recently where he said government spending is part of the problem. Unemployment is going to be an issue. Government spending is going to be an issue. External factors are going to be issues. So it's up in the air. The only thing I can tell you is don't expect rates to come down anytime soon, but yes, they could go up.
A couple of my coworkers were telling me they have 3 years left on their mortgage at 1.99%. I just renewed a few months ago at 5.09%. Not being envious here, but I'm very happy for them. Brian, over the past few weeks, you've noted that the Trudeau government has taken to demanding that the Conservatives do their jobs as it relates to the idea of an Alberta-made pension plan. Now, with only 2 Liberal seats in Alberta, why are the Liberals campaigning in Parliament on this issue?
Yeah, well, they're trying to paint the Conservatives as not standing up against the Alberta pension plan. Now, of course, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has come out and said he's against the idea of an Alberta pension plan, and he would encourage Albertans to stay in the Canada pension plan. That is, pure politics, and so is what the Liberals are doing. It's pure politics. In the rest of the country, Alberta withdrawing from the Canada pension plan is not going to be seen as a popular idea. It's going to be seen as something that could hurt the pensions of the rest of the country. And so the Liberals are latching onto anything. We've talked about their polling numbers. They're not doing well. So yeah, they're going to lose those 2 seats in Alberta, but can they scare voters in other parts of the country that, if you vote for these Conservatives, look, they're going to rip up the Canada pension plan. Your pension's going to be at risk. I think that is a big part of it. The only core group that the Liberals still do pretty well on are people over 55, particularly women. And I would hazard a guess, we don't have the exact data on this, but I'm betting a lot of retired civil servants are in that group. That's more anecdotal than science-based. But so they're trying to appeal to that. They want to draw back more of those voters. And I don't know if you're watching NFL football over the weekend, Hal. I know you're not much of a sports fan, but I don't know about you, but I saw Pierre Poilievre ads about pensions running in the middle of the Sunday NFL game. Second weekend in a row, I've seen Conservative ads. And this time he's talking about protecting people's pensions because he knows that this is an attack the Liberals are going to use. So it's not about those 2 Alberta seats. It's about the seats in British Columbia, in Manitoba, in Ontario.
Brian, it appears as though the Trudeau government plans to move ahead with banning and confiscating thousands upon thousands of firearms. Has there been any movement on that front? I mean, many hunters, farmers, and sport shooters are quite concerned right now.
There hasn't been any official movement since they extended the exemption until October 2025. So, all those guns that they banned on May 1st, 2020, you're a criminal for having them in your gun safe, but they don't know how to get them out of your gun safe. So you're a criminal for doing it, but we're going to exempt you from the law. You just can't move them. You can't use them. You can't transfer them. It's quite something. But here is the thing. Lots of chatter about will they be doing this through regulation. Now, the Canadian Centre for Firearms Rights, they just lost a court case, federal court case. It wasn't Supreme Court, where they challenged the May 1st, 2020 order in council that brought all this about. They said that the government had overstepped their bounds, that they did not properly consult, that they should have been doing this through legislation. The court disagreed. Now, the CCFR is likely going to be appealing this, but I believe the government was waiting until after that court case to see, okay, do we need to go ahead with legislation, which got us in trouble last time, which caused a lot of headaches, or can we just simply do this through regulation, stroke of a pen at a cabinet meeting, and be done with it? That is what I am hearing from people in the industry, people in law enforcement, that there is going to be regulation coming down shortly to deal with a lot of what the federal government wants to do.
And speaking of the federal government, Brian, and the Trudeau Liberals, it seems like their popularity is plunging. We talked about it before with the polls, and a recent poll, I believe it was Nano, showed that the Liberals are almost in the NDP territory. The Conservatives over 40% of support, the Liberals 22%, and the NDP 20%. It's incredible, the drop with the Justin Trudeau Liberals right now.
And there, some polls would show them being nearly wiped out in BC, where they currently hold 15 seats. The other parties hold 13 each. They would be decimated in the suburbs around Toronto. They would lose they've got 78 seats in Ontario right now. The Abacus poll that just came out, the modeling done on that said that in total, the Liberals would win 69 seats across the country. Not their worst showing ever. I believe that was 2011 under Michael Ignatieff with 34 seats, but that would be a devastating loss if they were reduced to 69 seats. They've got 24 in Atlantic Canada, 78 here in Ontario, 30-odd seats in Quebec. You're talking about losing in Liberal heartland, not just the swing areas that, every region, every party has areas that they win and they lose and they trade back and forth. It's how we change governments. But you would be losing in Liberal heartland seats.
Wow. Brian, with the war continuing to rage on between Israel and Hamas in the Middle East, we're seeing kind of a spillover effect here in Canada. A couple of Jewish schools in Montreal were shot at. Molotov cocktail was launched at a synagogue in Montreal, and anti-Semitism appears rampant. Brian, the rallies in support of Hamas and Palestinians is growing here in our country.
Yeah, and I've heard about actual targeting of Jewish individuals, businesses, community centers in Calgary, in Vancouver, a flower shop in Ottawa, Langdon Flowers, that I used to use. I didn't know they had a connection to the Jewish community. It was buy flowers there, send them for funerals, for special occasions all the time. They were robbed and ransacked because they supply a lot of these local synagogues with flowers for special occasions. Here in Toronto, there was a gentleman gentleman's a loose term here, on the weekend. It's supposedly a pro-Palestinian rally, but he turned it into a Hamas rally when he started to say, if you want your hostages back, you can have them back when you release all of our political prisoners. Yesterday, Hal, I interviewed two survivors of the October 7th terrorist attack from the kibbutz that was closest to the music festival. And it was heartbreaking listening to their stories, but they were also telling me that they're very disappointed what they're seeing here in Canada, that it is disturbing to them, and that people need to understand what happened. They don't want the war going on anymore either, but Hamas, they say, is the issue. And Hamas, they told me, is also the biggest oppressor of the Palestinian people in Gaza. They farm an area that goes right up to the border fence, and on their side, it's green, it's lush, they're growing everything. And on the Gaza Strip side, it's brown, it's dirt, there's nothing growing. And the difference is how the governments run things, how people are treated, and what the priorities are. And right now, the priority is terrorism from Hamas. And so the people in Canada that are coming out in support of Hamas, and if you're at a rally where they're saying those things that I was just mentioning, you're at a Hamas rally, well, you're supporting a terrorist organization that oppresses its own people.
I saw one of the videos as well of this one Muslim extremist leader who had a megaphone, and he was telling people that, Allah will wipe out the Zionists, will kill all of the Jews. But where are the police in all of this? I mean, that's hateful speech coming out of this person's mouth.
And that guy is Adil Sharkawi, who was arrested and held on a security certificate for alleged ties to terrorism going back to the Chrétien government. It was 2001, 2002, he was arrested on a security certificate. And, he's been a controversial figure for a long time. I don't understand why the police have not arrested him for what he said. Now, he claims, I didn't say kill the Jews. I said, and he said he didn't incite anyone to hate. He said he called for God to kill the Zionists. Well, so he's not inciting people to hate. I'm sorry, you're calling for Allah to kill all the Zionists and the enemies of the people of Palestine. Wow. You are inciting people to hate just because you're invoking the name of God. That doesn't get you out of jail free card. And because you're saying Zionists instead of Jews, I'm sorry, who are the Zionists? Well, 90% of Jews would say they're Zionists, I would say. So, yeah, I think he is pushing that. He's been denounced by every political figure in Quebec, I'm glad to say, but the police have not acted. And, that's not the only incident where police should have acted and haven't.
Political reporter and Sun columnist Brian Lilly, thanks so much for joining us today from Toronto.
Thanks for having me.
There are many troubled youth in Southern Alberta and also many wonderful families who are willing to take these kids in, but sometimes they need a little bit of help or support in making that big transition. And that's where McMahon Youth Services comes in. So to talk more about the impact that McMahon Youth Services has on youth and families here in Alberta is Tracy Muchler. She's the Executive Director of McMahon Youth Services for the South region. She joins us from Medicine Hat. Tracy, welcome to Bridge City News.
Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Okay, so maybe tell us a little bit about how McMahon Youth Services got its start and what it does.
Yeah, so McMahon is a nonprofit organization. We're actually a provincial organization, and we're one region of that provincial organization. So we cover all of Southern Alberta, and we serve individuals with diverse and often complex needs. So we do things such as skill building and support groups, recovery and addiction supports, supervised visitation, family mediation, housing, shelter, therapeutic foster caregiving that we might talk a little bit about, and lots of community connections. We also operate actually 2 drug treatment courts, one in Lethbridge and one in Medicine Hat.
Okay, so it's all about youth mainly.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
what are some of the main needs of the young people when they first encounter McMahon Youth Services?
Yeah, oftentimes there's so many complex and intertwining factors. And so oftentimes the youth that we're serving are very complex. And so one thing, though, that's prevalent right now in society, and especially with our youth right now, is mental health needs, and just really looking at the whole person's well-being. And so it might be mental health, it could be addiction, it could be housing, it could be skill building, anything to kind of support them in their transition into adulthood and independence.
Okay, so are you there to also sort of teach some skills and whatnot? And
Yeah, so we do have a couple of programs actually. We're part of the family resource networks, and a few of those programs have some skill building as well. And so it could be maybe that individuals or youth have never had the opportunity to learn cooking skills or housekeeping skills or how to write a resume or any of those things. And so we'll either do that with them or connect them as a service brokerage to other services in the communities to help them achieve those goals.
Okay. So what does your center look like? Do you have a place for them to stay as well?
So that totally depends on the location. In Lethbridge specifically, we actually do have a youth drop-in center. And so youth can absolutely come in, and there's a staff member there just to engage in whatever their needs might be that day. And so sometimes that need is just a safe, warm place. And sometimes it is like, hey, I want to learn how to do this, or I have a goal to get this job. And so, yeah, it's really unique to what the individual needs.
That is so cool. And McMahon Youth Services has grown a lot over the years, hasn't it? So to what credit would you owe that the growth of the
Oh
organization
my
to?
gosh, our staff are they're absolutely amazing, and just the support from obviously the community and of course the government of Alberta. They are who we would primarily get most of our funding from, and so we always thank them for those opportunities to provide these services to community. But yeah, no, the staff are just amazing and are really person-centered and there for the right reasons, and I think that translates just into really high quality service and outcomes.
That's incredible. Okay, so what about the youth that are involved? So you must have some great success stories. So how have you seen the programs that change the lives of Alberta youth?
Yeah, it's so cool. And I mean, I actually don't come from the sector, but that's what keeps me here is seeing those successes. And sometimes it's honestly the tiniest little things that we may take for granted. And so it could be just, recently we've had one youth partake in extracurricular activities. And that was something at, the age of 16, they had never had the opportunity to do. And so then just to see the benefits from that, whether it's friendships and social connections built, just the skills that you get from being in those peer groups, right? And so sometimes it's things as small as that to, sometimes we see the huge successes where you have a youth with complex needs and may have had some historical trauma that you really feel like you're in a hopeless situation to all of a sudden, they're 30 years old and applied. Sometimes we even have them coming back to give back to the community at McMahon or other employees or other employers because they really want to create those opportunities for others that they've had created for them.
That's really incredible. I love that. Now, how does it work exactly? How do these youth come across McMahon?
Yeah, so it kind of all depends on the program or service accessing. So we have some services that are open referral, and so anyone from the community can come. For example, the Youth Drop-In in Lethbridge or in Medicine Hat, we have what's called the Youth Hub. And so those are just things that, you might get access to through school or through a friend or however the means. There's other programs as well, though, that do require a referral. And lots of times those referrals may come from a housing body or children's services if the families had involvement with children's services. And so it really just depends. But of course, our open referral programs are available for self-referrals or for families and natural supports to connect with us.
Okay, and you're there for the fostering family as well, obviously, right?
We are, yeah, we're super excited. Over the last number of months, we've had the opportunity to work with what's called therapeutic foster caregiving. And so it's an addition to the traditional foster care continuum and also an alternative to group home care. And so it's a therapeutic family-based short-term out-of-home placement program that supports children with complex trauma care needs. And so we really promote an inclusive approach. And I guess what's different to traditional foster care is that the caregivers are given extra training and access to family specialists that can really help promote safety in the home and provide those wraparound supports to the youth. So it's a really exciting alternative that we're so pleased to be a part of. And would, I guess, just put in a little bit of a plug is that we're always looking for therapeutic foster caregivers. And so if you are interested in helping children in the program, please reach out, check our website or call any of our McMahon offices.
Okay, oh, that's wonderful that you're there to help support them. And is it in the form of like a group setting, or is it one-on-one counseling, or is it almost like a help phone? Like, help, I need help with this situation. Almost
Kind
like
of all of the
emergency.
above
Really?
is
Okay.
available to the homes. Yeah, it's, we really do want to create that community of caregivers as well to be supporting each other. But you do also then have a lot of one-on-one access to that family specialist, whether it be in the home or out in the community or by phone or all the different ways. We just really want to wrap around those families so that they can be successful.
Oh, that's wonderful. Now, times have changed a lot since the start of McMahon back in 1975. So, Tracy, are the issues impacting youth similar today as they were in the past, or have the needs become greater than in the past?
Yeah, we have this conversation all the time, and I'm not sure that I would say, yes, there is a great need, of course. I hate to say a little bit that it's greater. It absolutely is great, but I like to also say that it's different. When we look at, practices, for example, with children's services, it's a very different practice approach than it was even 5, 10 years ago. Things are continually evolving. And so, what I would say though is oftentimes, in those types of referral programs, the needs tend to be sometimes maybe more complex than we've seen in the past. One thing that absolutely, and COVID's had another huge impact on that, is the mental health needs of, our children, our youth, and just our communities in general has been huge. And so the conversations around that, I'm happy to see some of that stigma going away and just the awareness that there is. So, in that respect, it does feel a little bit different and heavier.
Sure. It's rampant too, isn't it, these days? It's
Yeah,
terrible.
yeah.
No.
So it's great to hear more conversation around it. And so it's hard to tell, is it that more people are comfortable talking about it and the need has always been there versus is it a new need? But
Yeah.
we do know with children and youth that the mental health needs are significant right now, and that's the future of our communities. So how do we invest in that?
Yeah, I know we've talked to a lot of psychologists over the past little while during the pandemic, and where obviously the use of technology is up and internet, people becoming reliant on it, especially with the online school and doing everything from home during that time frame. So do you find that this has had a factor on your youth? Has it helped or has it hindered them in any way?
It is for sure. And honestly, probably both. As with technology, there's so many benefits to it. But has it created a new environment than when I was a youth? Absolutely. We didn't have social media and the extra challenges and pressures that that puts on youth. And so I think it's probably safe to say that, yeah, it has added a level of complexity and pressure in society that ultimately affects our kiddos.
Yeah. Another thing that obviously makes headlines a lot too is the kids caught in human trafficking and sex work. So do you assist with youth caught in that type of situation as well, or even the drug trade for that matter?
Yeah, so we actually do right now. Our contract, we call it PSECA. And so it's actually focused on the southeast quarter of the province. And so they're doing lots of one-on-one work with individuals, as well as also working on awareness of those things. Because one thing is, it's often you don't think about it. It's kind of that hidden thing. And so lots of people don't even think that it's happening in our communities. And so the program actually does work around that as well. And so it's quite focused on, especially those potentials for online harms. And so really enhancing awareness around those risks of exploitation. We try and do education on, grooming, pressured sexual activity, online resources, because that's a huge piece right now. And just really trying to, how do we embrace technology and its benefits, but also keep our kids and youth and adults safe by decreasing those risk behaviors.
Oh, definitely. You mentioned the need for foster parents right now. So what is the process for fostering a child or a youth?
Yeah, so what you would do actually, it's quite an intensive process.
I can
And so
imagine.
I would recommend heading to our therapeutic foster care website. And we have a family specialist again that will address all the questions. And so we have community information sessions so you can see initially if it's a fit for you. And then it starts going down a pretty intensive process if you actually want to pursue having a foster child in your home. And so it's exciting, but it is a lot of work because we also want to make sure that it's a great fit for the youth and for the families and everyone involved, and that we have that safe environment for them.
Definitely. Can you talk about the impact that families can make on a child who needs a foster home?
Oh my gosh, it's incredible. So even early in these days where we have only a few, the impacts have been incredible. It can be increased school attendance. Again, it can be those connections and extracurricular activities. It can be emotional regulation results on that, where maybe they haven't had those skills to help regulate themselves before. And so honestly, the opportunities and impacts are endless.
Oh, definitely. And I would imagine that you've also seen an impact on the community by the work of McMahon Youth Services and the work of these foster families with these kids coming out of this.
It is. It's really cool. And you know, some of the neatest things that we've seen too is that maybe it's family members or supports that these kiddos actually have never had the opportunity to connect with are coming back into their lives and create those opportunities for that permanency in them. And so, yeah, it really is profound.
Fantastic. Do you have any specific stories that you can think of or share?
I guess honestly, one is that comes to mind is specifically just around school attendance. So, you know, we've had a youth that due to some historics has not been able to attend school regularly. And, you know, within a month or two, having those supports wrapped around them and the family have just given this sense of optimism and control in their lives, because we also really want to include them in the decision making. And so by empowering them and seeing them gain the confidence to say, no, this is what I need to succeed, and then how that comes out in little bits like it is school attendance, gaining employment, joining activities, has been amazing.
That's fantastic. It looks like we're out of time, but Tracy, thanks so much for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Tracy Mutchler is the Executive Director of McMahon Youth Services for the South Region. I'm Jeanette Roche on behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News. Thanks for watching.